Have you ever noticed how some individuals seem to make an impact before they even speak? The atmosphere adjusts. There's a tension in the air, not negative, just charged. It's not about appearance or posture. It's resonance, a kind of personal frequency that walks in before your body does. Carl Jung once described the self as the unifying force between the conscious mind and the hidden layers beneath it. When that alignment happens, something powerful takes shape. It creates an energy that isn't loud but impossible to ignore. This kind of presence doesn't rely on performance. It emerges from integrity, the unshakable connection between what you think, what you feel, and how you show up in the world. That inner harmony radiates outward. People sense it without understanding why. They pause. They look twice. They feel something. You don't have to speak loudly or take up space. Aggressively, the coherence between your internal world and your external actions creates a signature that leaves a lasting impression. It's as if your essence introduces itself before you do. Sometimes that kind of energy unsettles people, not because it's threatening, but because it breaks their usual rhythm. It forces a pause. It makes others reflect on their own authenticity, or lack thereof. Jung believed that the psyche was more than thoughts and feelings. It was presence. Not the kind that needs validation, but the kind that lingers like a scent or a song that stays in your head long after it's over. You become memorable not for what you say, but for what you are. This presence, though powerful, can also feel isolating. You're fully there, yet others can't always place what they're sensing. It creates reactions, curiosity, admiration, resistance. Some will be drawn in. Others might feel confronted by a mirror they didn't expect to face. But that's part of what makes your presence so striking. It's not about being seen, it's about being felt. And when that happens, few can forget. You walk into a space and suddenly the energy shifts. You haven't said a word, yet eyes glance your way, conversations pause, and something beneath the surface begins to stir in others. It's not that you're doing anything in particular. Your very presence does the heavy lifting. And it doesn't always feel welcome. There's a kind of quiet clarity that radiates from someone whose internal compass is aligned. Jung spoke often about the unconscious reacting to what hasn't been faced. That's exactly what happens here. You become a living invitation for others to see the parts of themselves they've kept hidden. You don't intend to unsettle anyone, but your authenticity acts like a high-voltage current. It illuminates everything around it. For those still tangled in self-denial, it's too much. You represent something confronting, a version of selfhood they haven't yet claimed. What happens next is rarely logical. People may pull away, become defensive, or even lash out. Not because of who you are, but because of what you activate within them. Jung's idea of the shadow, those repressed traits we're afraid to own, comes alive when someone with real presence walks in. But not all reactions are negative. For those ready to grow, your presence is a catalyst. They feel expanded, not exposed. Something in them wakes up. Around you, they breathe deeper, stand taller, or realize they've been living small. Your energy creates space, not just physically, but emotionally and even spiritually. You reflect what's possible, and while that can scare some, it liberates others. The difference lies not in your energy, but in what people are carrying inside. When they meet it, you don't force awareness, you reveal it unintentionally, and that's where the disturbance lives, not in your actions, but in your vibration. One that doesn't fit into roles or expectations, but moves through them, revealing what no one wanted to name. That's the real impact. Not drama, not volume, just truth, unfiltered, present, and unafraid to be felt. There's a certain kind of recognition that doesn't come from words. You've seen it, the way animals approach you without hesitation, how children stare as if they already know you, how you feel more yourself under open skies or among trees. That's not coincidence, that's resonance. Your energy doesn't just connect with people, it speaks directly to the instinctive world. Creatures that haven't been conditioned to doubt what they feel respond to you because your field is congruent. It carries no hidden agenda, no masked intent. It's simply real. Carl Jung often spoke of how the unconscious responds not to logic but to symbols, sensations, and archetypes. Animals, children, even the natural world operate on this level. They understand integrity not as a concept, but as a vibration. A dog won't be swayed by your job title. A child won't be impressed. By your vocabulary, they sense alignment. And when your energy reflects that inner stability, they trust it, immediately and completely. There's a silent exchange happening, one without language but full of meaning. You radiate emotional clarity, and that draws in the wild, the young, the untouched parts of the world that still operate from instinct. It's not about being good or kind, it's about being honest, energetically, and when something inside you is unsettled, they notice that too. Animals might withdraw. Children may become uneasy. Nature itself might feel distant, not because it's judging you, but because your field is sending mixed messages. You see, the unconscious doesn't lie, and neither do those who live close to it. Your connection with these pure forces isn't built through effort. It's cultivated through coherence. The more honest you are with yourself, the more magnetic you become to the parts of life that still remember what truth feels like. Jung knew that symbols held power because they bypassed the rational mind. Your aura functions much the same way. It bypasses the persona, reaches into the primal, and touches what hasn't been tamed. And when that happens, the wild, the innocent, and the natural meet you without fear. They recognize something rare, someone who isn't hiding. You walk in calmly, no ego, no performance. And yet something shifts. People straighten their backs, voices tighten, glances flicker. It's not that you've done anything. It's just that your presence speaks louder than most people's words. What they react to isn't volume, it's truth. Not the kind that lectures, but the kind that simply is. Carl Jung believed that most people operate behind carefully constructed social masks, the persona, he called it. This persona helps us blend in, be accepted, stay safe. But when someone steps into a room wearing no mask, it unsettles the performance. You don't intimidate because you're threatening. You intimidate because you represent something different, someone living from the inside out, not playing by the script. That alone is enough to trigger discomfort in those still clinging to roles. People project. They see arrogance where there's simply presence. They feel judged even if you've said nothing. Why? Because your authenticity shines a light on their facade. It's not confrontation, it's contrast. You're not asking anyone to change. You're not even trying to be noticed. But when you carry coherence, when your inner world matches your outer actions, it creates friction for those out of sync with themselves. Some will admire you for it. Others will misread you entirely. That's not your fault. That's the effect of bringing clarity into places where people survive on confusion. Jung taught that our shadows react when confronted with what we've refused to integrate. Your steadiness invites that reaction, not through force but through presence. You are, and that's enough to challenge everything that pretends to be. You may find yourself misunderstood, labeled distant or too intense, but the truth is, you're just whole in a world that hasn't yet remembered how to be. You don't need to shrink or soften just to soothe someone else's illusions. Your presence isn't a weapon, it's a mirror, and not everyone is ready to see themselves in it. You don't announce yourself, you don't need to. The room adjusts before you even sit down. Conversations shift. People glance up without knowing why. It's not charisma in the conventional sense, it's energetic architecture. You carry a field that rearranges what it touches. No fanfare, no demand for attention, just presence, clean, grounded, quietly potent. Carl Jung often explored the power of unconscious influence. He believed the psyche carries symbolic weight, and when someone embodies their truth, they become a living archetype. That's you. Without trying, you stir the emotional temperature of a space. It's not something you switch on, it's just who you are. When you're near, people breathe differently. Some become reflective, others get uneasy, not because you're imposing, but because your energy reshapes the emotional atmosphere. The space can't remain the same. It bends toward coherence. Your field is not loud, but it is complete. And that's rare. You've probably seen it happen. A crowded room grows still when you enter. A friend grows calmer in your company. Even tension begins to soften, as if your presence reorganizes what's out of place. Scientists like Barbara Brennan have written about the human energy field extending far beyond the body, interacting constantly with others, with places, with unspoken emotional layers. You don't have to say a thing for people to feel something, because your aura carries memory, alignment, a kind of inner symmetry that the unconscious immediately recognizes. Jung spoke of symbolic presence. When someone's energy holds meaning beyond words, that's the kind of influence you carry. You remind people of something ancient and real. That inner clarity doesn't need to perform. Not everyone will be comfortable with this. Some will misread you. Others will be magnetized without understanding why. But the impact is always there. Subtle, deep, and impossible to ignore. Your presence doesn't seek control. It offers resonance. And wherever you go, the energy doesn't just notice. You leave it changed. You can't explain it, but you know. Something feels off even when everything looks fine. You sense tension behind a smile, a hidden story behind someone's calm tone. Your body catches what logic misses. It's not guesswork. It's energetic awareness. This isn't about having a sixth sense or reading minds. It's about tuning into what's unspoken, the frequencies running beneath the noise. Your sensitivity acts like a radar, picking up emotional shifts, psychic undercurrents, and subtle signals that most never notice. Carl Jung described intuition as the way the unconscious communicates through images, sensations, and impressions. You live from that place. It's not an add-on, it's your baseline. Your intuition doesn't wait for proof, it reads the atmosphere, the pauses between words, the weight behind gestures. You don't always know how you just do. And often that knowing arrives long before facts catch up. You walk into a space and your nervous system starts scanning. Something in the energy alerts you, or relaxes you. You're decoding reality from the inside out, not from what's shown, but from what's felt. This ability isn't glamorous. At times it's exhausting. You pick up on conflict, dishonesty, sadness hidden behind laughter. And it's not always welcome, especially when others aren't ready to be seen that clearly. But it's not a burden. It's insight. A form of perception Jung believed could bridge the conscious and the unconscious, making the invisible visible. That's what your aura does. It doesn't just glow. It gathers information from the field and sends it straight to your core. You may try to rationalize it, push it aside, tell yourself you're imagining things. But deep down, you know better. Your instincts rarely miss. The body knows what the mind tries to explain away. And the more aligned you are internally, the clearer this channel becomes. Intuition stops being occasional and becomes your compass. It helps you navigate relationships, avoid chaos, and walk straight into truth, even when you can't explain why. You've tried to play along. Nodded politely, smiled at the usual surface-level questions, answered with the expected replies. But somewhere between the comments about the weather and another shallow laugh, your energy quietly exits the room. Your body doesn't lie. You feel it in your chest, a tightening, a withdrawal. It's not that you're rude, you're just wired for something real. And your presence, without saying a word, asks for more. Jung spoke of the inner quest toward wholeness, the slow unveiling of what lies beneath the surface. But surface is exactly where small talk lives. It circles the edges of connection, afraid to go deeper. And you live in the depths. Empty words exhaust you. Social pleasantries feel like noise. You crave the kind of interaction where masks come off, where eyes speak louder than mouths, where time stops because truth has entered the space. That kind of connection is rare, and the rarity of it leaves you lonely sometimes, not for people, but for presence. You weren't made for performance. You don't thrive in spaces where everyone is pretending to be fine. Your energy demands honesty. It invites silence over forced laughter, sincerity over banter. But here's the paradox. The more your aura filters out the fake, the fewer people remain. Conversations grow fewer, but they mean more. The room gets quieter, but the energy becomes richer. You stop being surrounded and start being seen. This craving for authenticity isn't elitism, it's alignment. Your field only opens when truth walks in. And until then, it protects your essence from draining interactions that offer nothing in return. Jung believed that integrating the unconscious required facing the truth within. You, just by being yourself, create a field that asks others to do the same. Not everyone accepts the invitation, but the ones who do stay. You walk in with nothing but presence, and suddenly someone reacts as if you've said too much. Admiration turns obsessive, criticism comes from nowhere, or silence grows heavy. What they see in you isn't about you. It's what they've hidden from themselves. Carl Jung spoke of the shadow, the parts of ourselves we deny, bury, or disown to feel acceptable. But the shadow doesn't disappear. It waits. And when someone with clarity and inner balance appears, it starts to stir. That someone is you. You don't need to confront anyone. Your existence does it for you. Your energy reflects, not because you want it to, but because it can't help but act like a mirror. And mirrors are dangerous for those who aren't ready to look. People might idealize you, placing you on a pedestal you never asked for. Others might project their frustration onto you, assigning you traits you don't carry. They don't see you. They see the parts of themselves that your truth wakes up. That's the weight of having a coherent aura. You activate what others have suppressed, and their reaction isn't about your words or your actions. It's about what you represent. Honesty, vulnerability, self-ownership. To carry this kind of energy is to live among projections. You'll be misunderstood, praised for the wrong reasons, blamed for what you never did. The key is knowing what's yours and what was thrown at you. Jung reminded us that illumination brings discomfort before clarity. The light reveals the hidden, and that's what you do, just by being fully present. So when people react in ways that make no sense, remember, you're not the cause. You're just the catalyst. And that's a sign that your energy is doing what it naturally does, shine. You say nothing, and somehow the air changes. People notice you not because you speak, but because you don't. Your silence isn't empty. It's full, contained, alive. There's a rare kind of communication that happens without words. Yours is that kind. You carry a stillness that doesn't beg for attention but commands it. Without effort, you create presence. A kind that presses pause on the noise around you. Carl Jung often emphasized the power of inner containment, the ability to hold space for yourself, to be rooted in your own truth. That's what your silence does. It's not avoidance. It's not withdrawal, it's signal. In a world where people talk to be heard, you resonate by simply existing. You don't waste energy explaining what doesn't need defending. You don't speak just to fill silence. Instead, you offer the kind of pause that makes people reflect, even if they don't know why. Those around you might mistake your quiet for distance, Some may feel exposed in your presence, thinking your lack of chatter means judgment, but what they're reacting to is clarity. You radiate intention. You hold your space with ease, and that unsettles those who haven't found comfort in their own presence yet. Jung believed the unconscious recognizes symbols, not logic. Silence is one of those symbols. It speaks directly to the inner world, and yours carries weight, not through volume, but through stillness that can't be ignored. People may not remember your words. They'll remember how they felt when you said nothing. In your silence, there's permission for truth, for vulnerability, for stillness. It's not just the absence of noise, it's the presence of alignment. They weren't planning to open up, but they do. A stranger at a cafe, a co-worker in passing, even someone you barely know, suddenly telling you things they've kept buried for years. And all you did was listen. You don't ask for these confessions. They arrive naturally, as if some part of the person instinctively knows it's finally safe to exhale. Your presence doesn't demand vulnerability, it makes it possible. Carl Jung believed the unconscious is always seeking expression, waiting for the right conditions to speak. Your energy creates those conditions. Without realizing it, you become the space where others can stop performing. It's not because you offer advice. It's not pity. It's not even interest, really. It's the way you hold space. Without pressure, without judgment. That kind of stability is rare. And when someone senses it, their armor starts to fall away. Sometimes tears come, stories pour out, secrets slip into the open. And then there's that familiar moment, the glance, the apology, the "I don't know why I just told you that." But you know, it's not about what you say, it's about how you are. You carry a kind of emotional neutrality that invites truth. You're not there to fix, to label, or to interrupt. You're there to be, and in that being, others find there. Jung taught that transformation begins in the unconscious, often emerging through symbols, emotions, and unfiltered expression. That's what people experience around you. A quiet gateway to themselves. This gift comes with weight. Not everyone can hold what others are ready to release. But you do, not by effort, but by presence, by allowing things to rise without trying, to change their shape. Don't be surprised when people share things they've never told anyone. Your aura signals one message clearly. You're safe here. You don't raise your voice, you don't rebel loudly. Yet somehow your very existence feels like resistance, not because you're trying to challenge anyone, but because you've stopped trying to fit. That unsettles people. Carl Jung spoke about the tension between the individual and the collective, the struggle of becoming yourself in a world that rewards imitation. When someone chooses authenticity over approval, it disturbs the script. You've made that choice, and it shows. Your freedom doesn't come from breaking rules. It comes from no longer needing them to define you. You don't explain your truth or shrink to protect someone's comfort. You simply live as you are. And for those still hiding behind layers, that's too much. You become a silent question in their presence. What are you still pretending to? But there's something provocative about someone who no longer asks for permission. Your walk, your words, your stillness, they all say the same thing. I'm not here to perform. And while some find that inspiring, others find it threatening. Not because you're aggressive, but because your light reveals the weight others still carry. You're the contrast they didn't expect, the reminder of everything they've silenced. In themselves, Jung believed true freedom wasn't about escape. It was about integration. Facing all that we are and still choosing to show up whole. That's what your energy carries. Wholeness, earned through internal fire. Your presence disrupts because it shines without apology, and anything that's still dimming itself will react. Some will call you arrogant. Others will call you brave, but none will leave untouched. You're not here to follow, you're here to live wide open, and that in itself is a revolution. You've already left, but the atmosphere hasn't recovered yet. The conversation feels different, The room carries something. It's not about memory, it's the residue of presence. Your energy doesn't vanish when you do. It lingers like a scent, like a chord still ringing after the music stops. Not because you demanded attention, but because you showed up fully. Carl Jung often described the psyche as expansive, stretching beyond what we can see or touch. That idea lives in your presence. When you're around, people feel a shift. When you're gone, they feel the space you once held. It's not about being unforgettable in the traditional sense. It's more subtle than that. It's the way someone suddenly finds clarity after speaking with you, the strange silence that follows your departure, the unexpected wave of introspection hours later. Your aura plants seeds. It challenges assumptions, opens emotional windows, invites people to feel more than they planned to. You don't push, you imprint. There's a kind of emotional aftershock that follows people like you, not disruptive, but undeniable. A touch of energy that remains long. After your body has exited the scene, some might feel comforted, others exposed. But either way, something has shifted, and they know it. Jung believed that encounters with real symbols, true expressions of the inner self, could activate the unconscious. You are that symbol, not because you perform, but because you align. That alignment leaves a mark. It's not legacy in the grand sense, it's energetic memory. The kind that doesn't fade with distance or time, and the ones who felt it, they won't forget. Not because you wanted to be remembered, but because you were really there. What people feel when they're near you, the calm, the clarity, the quiet strength, didn't come easy. It wasn't inherited or taught in a book. It was built slowly through the kind of internal storms no one else saw. You faced the parts of yourself others run from, the endings that didn't ask for your permission, the nights where silence felt like weight. But you didn't collapse, you reassembled. Carl Jung said the journey to the self demands a descent into shadow, a confrontation with what's been buried. You've made that descent. And what people now feel in your energy is the result of that return. Your aura wasn't born radiant. It became that way, forged in moments of surrender, stitched together through truth, grounded by resilience. Every scar, every reckoning, every time you refused to betray your soul, added something to your presence. That's why your energy can't be faked. It carries weight. It holds stories. It echoes all the versions of you that didn't make it. So this one could stand whole. People sense it, they call it glow, they call it magnetism. But what they're really feeling is completion. You're not seeking approval. You're not chasing belonging. You're just being. And that state of wholeness creates waves. You don't wear your pain, but it lives beneath your peace, refined, integrated, turned into wisdom. And that wisdom lives in your field. It speaks without sound. It moves without trying. Jung believed the deepest truth of a person is revealed not through words, but through the quiet consistency of their energy. That's what your presence has become, a message, a mirror, a reminder. You don't disturb the world because you're loud. You disturb it because you're real. And in being real, you invite others to remember what they've forgotten in themselves. That's what a powerful aura truly is. Not a glow from above, but a fire built deep within and carried everywhere you go.